This mini lecture is going to focus on constitutions and rights. We're talking about types of governments and specifically about democracy. And constitutions and rights, civil and political rights specifically, are very important to our understanding of what is a functioning democracy. So let's think a little bit about what are constitutions. A constitution, not just the US Constitution, any constitution, is a structural document that is at the foundation of the government or of any government for that matter. It is becoming, because it is a structural document, it is the supreme law of the land. That means that every other law, legislation, rule, norm, decree, whatever comes after that, have to fit to the Constitution, cannot be in conflict with the Constitution, because it is the supreme law of the land. Now, most constitutions, what they do, aside from being the foundation of the government, is that they describe the structure of the institutions, they describe the different government branches and the relations between those branches. The Constitution also set the electoral system, who votes, who can run to office, when are votes happening, when an election happening, how many times are you allowed to vote, how do you vote, are there any prerequisites before you can vote, etc., etc. So everything that has to do with elections and the electoral system is also specified in a constitution or in the constitution. So we have this document that is foundational, that describing the structure of the government, its different branches, the relationship between them, and the electoral system. So all in all, we can say that the Constitution is a blueprint for government operations. Something else that the Constitution brings to the table is impartiality and predictability. The predictability part means that looking back and then looking forward, looking into the future, you could expect that if you leave Earth and you come back in 50 or 100 or 200 years, barring any major changes, some things in a country like the United States will be the same. Some things like how many branches of government do we have? What are the relationship between them? And how does our electoral system look like and operate? The point about impartiality is not just this longevity, but also this idea that it's not, say that today we have a president that belongs to the Democratic Party, but if we elect a president that belongs to the Republican Party, we're still going to maintain the same structure of government, the same branches, the same relationship between them, and the same electoral system. So this idea of the twin ideas of impartiality and predictability comes hand in hand and bring in stability into the system, and mainly maintain the system together. Now, a constitution can work if and only if the citizens see it as legitimate. Because if not, then that would give fuel to revolutionary movements or other movements that want to dismantle the system. But if we have a well accepted constitution, then it is legitimate, and that gives the government some level of legitimacy, even if the people disagree with specific policy decisions. All in all, this is what we have in the United States. We have people that are maybe unhappy with this president or that Congress member, with a specific policy or an approach or specific laws. But all in all, we do accept and believe in our political system as it is built and specified in the Constitution. The idea of checks and balances come to constitutions and come to democratic governments, and it is written into the Constitution. And the idea here is that you don't want, or we don't want, any one branch of government to become too powerful. Um, and we want to make sure that there's enough in the process in terms of considering different ideas and weighing the pros and cons of everything. And this is why we have those checks and balances and why they are written into the Constitution, so they cannot be easily changed or get rid of. Checks and balances also brings in electoral accountability, because elected officials, because they have to be elected, have to serve the people. So maybe that the question here could be, why do politicians serve us, right? And the answer is twofold. Some of them may feel that, that's their mission in life. They like public service. They want to help people. They want to make policy, etc. And at the same time, we, the people, have a check on our elected officials through electoral accountability. They have to get reelected. If you ask any Congress member in the United States, what do they do a day after they get elected, especially House representatives that have to stand for reelection every 2 years, they'll tell you right away. They'll start their reelection campaign. So everything that they're doing, everything that they're saying, every statement, every vote that they cast is done with this idea in mind that my constituents and my voters are looking, and that is my political longevity is on the line, not just the policy or deciding about budgets, etc. And so that is a great check that comes with um, the electoral system. The separation of power, also written into the Constitution, is this idea that the branches of government are separated and are checking each other. So the president could be from the same party that has the majority in Congress, but they have different roles in government. And Congress have to check the president has to check Congress, and the Supreme Court or the judiciary has to check the operation of all of them. Right? In a presidential setting, that's just the one that we have here in the United States, the three branches are very clear and distinct from each other. In a parliamentary system, such as the one in the UK or um, a country like Poland and many, many other countries, the head of the government, in that case the prime minister, usually is elected or chosen or rose from within its party, and he or she will be the head of the party that won the most votes. That changes a little bit the dynamic between the branches, because arguably the executive at that point is not completely independent from the legislator, and vice versa. We can also look at systems that have federalism, just like the United States, right? That we have local, state, and then the federal government, and that the federal government is the national government. And the states, while they have some powers and a lot of ways to control their own territories, they don't have things like a military, they don't have foreign relations, they don't control the economic system. There's a lot of things that they actually don't control. And that comes back to the federal government. Such system exists in Germany, in the United States, to some degree in Mexico as well. And that is different from a confederation. In a confederation, the units have more independent power, something like the European Union. And then there are the unitary systems where it's one country without a lot of local or domestic division in it. The US has both vertical and horizontal checks and balances. The vertical ones are the federal government, state government, local governments, and the horizontal one is the three branches of government, um, legislative, executive, and judiciary. So in the United States, the federal constitution, because we also have state constitutions in all states, but the federal constitution is the one that we refer to as the U.S. Constitution, and it has been in power since March 4, 1789, and it governs all the states and all the people living in the territory. It describes the branches of government and how the balance of power operates within the federal system. It is short. I had you read the Constitution and look at the different articles. You can see that a lot of them are extremely short. The Second Amendment, for an amendment that has a lot of political discussions and debates attached to it, is only a sentence long, right? A lot of the other amendments and articles of the constitutions are very short, and they're also vague. Things look specified, but they're not completely clear. And the shortness and vagueness of the constitution brings in some advantages and disadvantages, and I encourage you to pause this video for a second or 30 seconds and think about it, maybe jot down some of those advantages and disadvantages. I'm hoping that some of the things that you were thinking about in terms of advantages and disadvantages include, for example, short, meaning that it's accessible, it's very easy to read it and to go over and to refer to it. But shortness also means that there's a lot of things that are just implied and are not really discussed in details or referred to specifically. The same goes for how vague the Constitution is. Being vague allows for a lot of interpretations and adjustments and fitting what the Constitution say to the situation. At the same time, if you allow too much flexibility, if things are way too vague, then do they really mean anything? Now, that brings in a debate in the United States and even in the United States Supreme Court and all throughout our government, and academia, and everywhere by people as well, is how should we understand the Constitution when we read it? How should we interpret it? There is the originalism approach, and then there is the approach which we call organic, this idea that the Constitution is a living, breathing document that should and can, it's in the interpretation of it, should and can evolve and change with time, with technological advancement, with social changes, with waves of immigration and new cultures, etc., etc. On the other side, in the original interpretation approach says that we need to be rigid with our interpretations. So that's what gives the Constitution the power, this idea of impartiality and predictability. And so too much allowing for things to be interpreted and reinterpreted and adjusted to context and time is actually diminishing the power of the Constitution. So we have a real clear ongoing debate between those who believe in originalism interpretation and those who believe that the Constitution is a living, breathing document. And obviously, there are people who find themselves closer to a pure type or one or the other, and there are those who are somewhere in the middle. Next, we need to consider civil rights and liberties. There's this idea that civil rights and liberties are inherent um, to us being people, to us being citizens, to us living in a certain place, or they are given. And it's a small difference, but the big meaningful difference between those two approaches is that if they are inherent, then there is a duty of the government to protect our civil rights and liberties. If they are given, then maybe there is still a duty of the government to protect what we were given, but it also suggests that there could be some flexibility interpretation or things could change a little bit. Basically, when we talk about civil and political rights and liberties, we are talking about those safeguards that the people have vis-a-vis the government. So human rights or civil and political rights limit what the government can do and safeguard the rights of people. So if you think about freedom of speech, for example, or freedom of religion, that's basically saying that the government is not allowed to limit our free speech, is not allowed to tell me what to say and what not to say. The government is not allowed to tell me what religion to believe in or if I choose to not believe at all. So that is this idea, without going into details of one by one, but this is the general idea behind civil rights and liberties. Now, some of you can ask, well, who is covered here? And we know that different countries cover people differently. So is this just for citizens? Is this just for voters? Is it for everybody who live in the territory? What is the situation with children? What is the situation with undocumented minorities, right? Those are all questions that we need to ask and think about when we are thinking about civil rights and liberties. So things like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. Um, all of those arguably are civil rights and liberties. So again, once again, stop the recording for a minute or so and sit down with your thoughts and maybe jot down a little bit. What do you think? Do we live up to it in the United States? Are we protecting, does our government protect or protect enough our civil rights and liberties? Why and why not? Obviously. So there it is. That concludes our little discussion about constitutions and about civil rights and liberties. There are in the world of political science, obviously there's um, scholars of constitutional law. There are scholars of human rights and civil rights and liberties. We teach a lot of those classes here at CSI, and you're welcome to take as many of those as you like once you advance in your studies. But almost each of those slides could be stretched over a whole semester if you include learning and studying and researching a lot of the aspects that are related to it.